Thank you. Okay. All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular meeting of council. We being 7 o'clock, we have the land acknowledgement in our agenda, and I will call the meeting to order. Council, we've got the agenda in front of us. Any conflicts or concerns on that score? Yes, Councillor Toth.
Thank you. Looking at the notice of motion, I have some, before we even get to discussing it, I'm concerned about its being on the agenda at all, because I think clause 1 is an illegal action. And I don't think we as a municipality have the authority to override provincial law. And so I'm curious whether this should even be on the agenda tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I was asking if there were any declarations of conflict. And then we'll go to the adoption of the agenda. So you wish to, do you have a suggestion about the agenda?
Well, like I said, I'm willing to discuss as long as it's within order for something that should be on the agenda. And so I guess I seek clarity from corporate officer or whatever. Do we as a municipality have the ability to override provincial law?
Okay, I think that's part of the discussion that would come up when we start discussing it. So your concern about whether or not it should be on the agenda is different than what you've just said. So I'd like to see if council would like to adopt the agenda as presented. Motion? Motion to amend? Thank you. Is there a seconder? Great. Okay, all in favor of adoption of the agenda as presented? Carried. Then it is my pleasure to proclaim today, March 19th, as Dietitians Day in the District of Sechelt, and also to proclaim the month of March as Mois de la Francophonie in the District of Sechelt. With no further ado, we'll go to item 5.1, and this is the DVP application for 5698 Medusa. I assume, Mr. Hall, you were, oh, beg your, of course, we have Mr. Baker with us. Mr. Baker, we've got the report in front of us, and I see the applicant's rep has already taken the speaker's chair. Mr. Baker, do you have anything you want to add to your report or clarifications?
Nothing really. I was just going to introduce the application, but if council sees determines otherwise, then I have nothing to add.
I think it's well laid out, so we can take it as read. And Ms. Letman, are you looking to add something to it, or are you looking to be here to answer questions? Excellent, answer questions. All right, so council, any questions? Any? Yes, Councillor McLaughlin.
Yes, thank you, through the chair. I'm just wondering, in this case, the garage is located across from the senior center parking lot. And so it's not a typical residential situation where people have a little room and their laneways to jimmy around and such. But in this case, I wonder if the applicant considered the idea of actually trying to work within the 3-meter setback, and by reducing the size of the garage and designing something like that.
Okay. To me.
Yes.
All right, thanks. And that brings a question perhaps related. I'm not clear, are we rebuilding? Because there's a plan in the presentation, Mr. Baker.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So no, the proposal is to convert the existing rear garage into a detached accessory dwelling unit. So essentially a laneway house. So from my understanding, that there's no proposal to change the building footprint. Hence this for the variance. Thank you.
Thanks, because it relates to page 16, and I know some of us had a brief chat ahead of time. So, Ms. Ledman, you can clarify for us, please?
Yes, that floor plan was erroneously left. The original plan was to build a second story onto the existing building. But when in consideration of the costs and the structural concerns and that this was the least expensive way to move, just to do the 3-meter setback would essentially eliminate most of the building. So there would be nothing left
Right.
to use to rebuild. You'd essentially be building new, and that would be cost prohibitive to the applicant.
Okay, so page 16 should be struck, doesn't
Correct.
apply. And then.
But in
Councillor
terms of
McLaughlin-
the actual, it's all about costs. I mean, costs are running $400 a square foot. You rebuild that building at 1,000 square meters, you're talking, what is that? 400? Yeah,
Councillor McLaughlin?
Yes, if I could follow up.
Me, Please,
Yeah, through the chair. Well, I mean, this is an interesting situation which may come up over and over again. And I was wondering, since we have our chief building official here, if you could talk about the issues in terms of getting building permits for such units. When you're converting a garage, I think where the floor and the starting point of the building is not the same, a garage versus a habitable building. So what would this entail? If you could summarize for us, thank you.
Sorry.
To Councillor McLaughlin through the mayor. A building permit to convert a space that was otherwise not a conditioned space, not intended for occupation as a residence entails several things, not the least of which is coming up with a means to mitigate radon infiltration into the space. So the code does have prescriptive measures to do that, and that's typically a layer of coarse material underneath the floor slab, protected by an air barrier upon which you would pour the floor slab, and coming through that would be a 4-inch pipe going up through the roof. But the code also in Division C allows for alternative solutions that meet the objectives. In the case of radon, of course, it's a life safety objective. And so the applicant can certainly explore an alternative solution and present it to staff for radon mitigation. And then it's a matter of having the life safety systems in place and trying to attain a level meeting the insulation and air leakage requirements of the code, realizing it is an older building, but in essence, it's kind of a juggling act in a way, but with life safety, of course, leading the review.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, council, other questions, comments? Motions? Councillor Bell, I saw first.
Yeah, I think just reading through the chair, page 14 of the staff report, I think there's some, I'm in support of this. I think that it checks some number of boxes in terms of it's just saying accustomed to having a building at this location. Construction disruption will be kept, to a minimum. And the other thing is it is certainly fits the need of the provincial regulations around supporting infill housing. So I think it's a good project and I'm in support of it.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Shepherd, sorry.
Yeah, I'll move the
Councillor Exter.
recommendation on page 6.
Very good. Thank you. Is there a seconder? Second, now Councillor Exter.
Yeah, thanks. This is just the beginning and continuing forward, probably in the more dense areas of our communities, what would be considered laneway housing in a lot of ways, to provide alternative and or affordable housing to the community in need. So I'm in support. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor
Thank
McLaughlin.
you, through the chair. I just had a question about the parking, the tandem parking of 6
Mhm.
cars in a row.
Right.
And my impression is typically that's not acceptable. They have to be able to get in and out without having to move
Mhm.
3 or 4 other cars. So how does that work? Thanks.
I guess that's a question for Mr. Baker. For the,
Yep. So again, from our understanding, the parking for the potential laneway house would use the lane, access from the lane, whereas the principal dwelling or the residence would be accessed from Medusa Street.
and I think the question is, you know, the car in the middle, the one of the.
Right.
You gotta move the other two cars to get your car out kind of thing. Is that generally accepted? I think that's the nature of your question, Council.
Yeah, I would say so. Yep.
You, Ms. Letman?
I just want to point out that the zoning bylaw requires only 4 spaces.
Uh-huh.
The fifth or sixth vehicle there was shown just for illustration
Right.
purposes.
Right.
And it
Very
would
good.
normally be like my own home that I have tandem parking,
Yeah.
3 spaces, right? So,
Put your boat in the middle spot. Okay. Not a question perhaps for me if I don't have others or see others. Mr. Baker, are we setting any sort of precedent? Is this by approving this, are we essentially saying all lots can have this minimum setback?
I wouldn't say necessarily setting a precedent. I mean, every parcel is unique and every proposal is unique to the lot and adjacent uses. I mean,
Okay.
yeah.
And you don't have the benefit of being in the room, but Mr. Hall had his hand up and I missed it before it went to you.
Sure, I mean, council has considered a couple of these applications in the last few years, where people have converted an accessory building into a detached accessory dwelling unit. I think in at least 1 or 2 of those cases, there were similar kind of setback variances to one side of the property. I guess this is probably the most unique in terms of distance to the lane. But in terms of setting a precedent, no, I mean, a DBP is still a entirely discretionary decision of council. I think there's sort of the objective of providing housing opportunities given existing buildings. At the same time, there's no obligation on council to approve another laneway house application just because this one was maybe approved.
Mhm.
It'll be entirely dependent on the site circumstances.
Okay, so the action of one DVP is not committing us to do the same thing in
No.
future. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah. I am concerned that, I mean, this is a fairly dilapidated building. If it's all about cost, you know, I want this to be a precedent that is going to be a good model for the community, not a model of doing as little as possible to a very old, you know, garage that doesn't meet any standards for setbacks. I mean, it didn't meet bylaw 25 either, especially being in this location, right next to
Council McLaughlin.
the seniors center, you know, where seniors are backing up, driving there. It's quite a busy spot. And without any setback more than what's existing, I mean, there's no opportunity really to do any screening between the senior center and this building. I just don't think it's a very good precedent in terms of design. And in the past, whenever I've had to have parking by the municipality, it's, you know, there's 3 units there and 2 ways in. So I don't really see that as being an adequate parking, not quality at all. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you. Yes, Councillor Shepherd.
No, just through the chair, with respect to the last comment from Councillor McLaughlin, you know, this issue is focused on the setback and whether we should be approving this. It's not about whether it should be a model building or not. So I think we should focus on staff's recommendation.
Thank you. Very good. Okay, anything else, council? Not, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor McLaughlin is opposed. The motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Baker. Thank you, Ms. Letman. We'll move on then to page 21, which is why everybody's here, of course, for the parcel tax roll review panel appointments. Okay, so I'm sure any of the people that have not been named in the proposed motion will be pleased to make this motion. Moved by Councillor Shepherd and seconded by Councillor Bell. maybe, that okay, you guys? Yeah. There any, and it's, let's not be too flippant about it. This is a important part of our process, and so are there any questions or concerns or comments? Other than we appreciate you stepping up. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried. All right, then we go to item 5.3 and the notice of motion, my notice of motion, starting on page 32. So maybe if council will indulge me, big reason that I brought this forward. This is not perfect. This is something that I think is a component of the changing times. You know, I'm not trying to bring back something that we debated at length over the last couple of years, but I'm really aware from talking to people in the community. I'm aware of the empty storefronts on Cowrie Street that, you know, and politics and elections and all that stuff. Things have changed. And I guess you'll notice in my motion, it starts with the word resilience. And I think that is something that we need to focus on for the foreseeable future. I think to be resilient, we need to be flexible, and we have to be willing to accept that changes may happen or may be needed. You know, I think if we don't find ways to support our businesses, in this case, while protecting the residents, can't say that strongly enough. This is one way that we can help our business community and the employees that work in them. So, you know, I could go on at great length about the background, but I think that's the fundamental thing. We can discuss the fine points of legalities and the provincial mandates or directions, but you know, I guess I just offer, I really think we can do this in a way that respects and protects the local communities. I think we've seen that with the results of our efforts, thanks to the strong enforcement. You know, we'd staffed up to provide more enforcement, and our complaints are down a lot. I think if I stand of the notes somewhere, but in the third quarter report we received, we had 2 complaints about short-term rentals. But even 2 is too much, but, you know, we're on the right trend. So my logic in this is to give this a try at a time when it is, as I said, a challenging world, and looking forward in the coming months, it's even more challenging to see what things are going to be like. So my nature is to try something, make sure that we have the guardrails in place for enforcement. I did hear and have read the letters that people are saying there are still party houses. I don't care if the party house is a short-term rental or a house that somebody's living in. We have to enforce our noise bylaws. So, you know, turning to the issue of short-term rentals, it's ironic that the hotels, I gather, are having an extraordinarily good year, the motels, the resorts. Unfortunately, a lot of the occupants are healthcare workers and tradespeople. And there's a whole other discussion about that, but in terms of the practical question is, where are tourists going to stay? And this is one small piece, but to show that we welcome tourists is a part of hopefully getting hotels and more hotels and motels and resorts built in the coming years. I think I think I'll leave it there. I know there's obviously, I've read the letters. I thank the community for them. I would offer to you that my commitment is that we can only do this with responsive enforcement. It needs to be even perhaps better than it has been. And I want to compliment the team. We have done a good job, but we can always do more. And I think that needs to be done, even if this was not to be approved. Staff reported last fall that we had only 6 short-term, type 3 short-term rentals. And as I said, only 2 complaints during the summer of 2023. So if something in that doesn't add up, because if we've got a lot of type 3s that are unlicensed and we're not getting complaints, I'm not sure why there's a concern about having a few more short-term rentals. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there for now. I'm sure I'll have some comments in response to what council, how you wish to proceed. Councillor Shepherd.
Yeah, I think I understand where the sentiment is coming from. You know, the business community, tourism in particular, it is a really important part of our economy. We're trying to help, and I'll talk about it later, what council has done during its term here now to try and support tourism. I think there are more things that we can do. However, let me just sort of race through some of the draft. So obviously tourism is a central part of our community. Your second point, our limited stock of motels and other tourist accommodations are already fully booked for the next many months. That may be true of hotels because we have such a limited number. It's not true of Airbnbs. In fact, one of the people writing into council did a quick canvass of Airbnbs over this summer coming up and found vacancies. So there are units available for rent. Would allowing more type 3s to open provide more space? Of course it would, and it would help the community. But as you've already mentioned, we're facing a backlash already from type 3 licenses that we're still having problems where people are operating illegally. So on to point 4, key rationale for reducing the number of short-term rentals in 2023 with the expectation that there would be an increase in the supply of affordable rental housing. I agree with this point that it hasn't been absolutely proven, or I haven't seen studies where the cancellation of those has translated into full-time housing. However, it is the provincial law and direction that they're going in. So if we were to endorse this, we would be going in front of a minister trying to lobby against one of the sort of central points of their legislation. And it sounds great on paper, but we're just going to make absolutely no headway with the province. I'll leave it at that. I have other comments. I mean, I think council is trying to bolster tourism here. You know, we supported the Downtown Business Association for their $1 million grant, where we're setting aside $100,000 to rework the ocean front, and we're hoping that they do get that. Chamber of Commerce, we're fully behind the Invest in Seashell conference that they're trying to set up for the fall. This council actually supported recently an application, I think in the Shora area, where there's a conference center with cabins. So we're actively trying to, where we can within the law, build out extra housing for tourism. So I don't think you can say that this council is not trying to bolster tourism. What I think we're saying is we have to conform to the province's legislation. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I don't believe I said anywhere in here that we haven't been doing a lot. So that, I think we can, I have said I think we can do more. Councillor Toth?
Thank you. Yeah, I've got Airbnb open right now, and even when you look at the Writers Festival period of time, and you zoom right into Seashell, there's 113 Airbnb rentals that are available for that time frame. So we've got lots. I'm really not interested in changing the rules at this time, especially in the face of the provincial laws that are in place. I was on a local government roundtable call last week before, and the minister was very clear that the province is not interested in changing the rules when it comes to short-term rentals. And, you know, even if I was supportive of this, there's nothing the District of Sechelt is going to do to change the provincial mind on this matter. I think they've been very clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rowe.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, I can't support this. I just am not gonna, I don't think we should be spending energy on items that just go in the face of provincial legislation. And I think there's other things we need to be putting our advocacy hat to. You know, this was years and years of advocating of communities, neighborhoods, talking to us about this issue. This was a major issue in the 2018 election, and it took us almost till the end of the term to get somewhere with it. This is very important to our community, and I don't, you know, there's a mechanism in place that the province has put in place for communities to receive an exemption. So there is an option should we meet that criteria. I think we're a ways away from doing that. And I understand that people don't necessarily believe that switch from Airbnb to long-term rentals, but I see it. There's 2 within a block of where I live, and that's a big deal. And I know that people that we hire are finding rentals. Not everybody is going into VCH housing, and if they do, it's usually temporary for 3 months until they find somewhere to live. So I think things are improving on the long-term rental side. Do I have data to prove that? No. Yeah, it's all anecdotal. But those are people that then, you know, move and purchase, become taxpayers, and become part of our community. So, and I have to say that of all the things that we've been met with in the last 6 years, speaking for me and Alton, this is the only item that people have stopped me in the grocery store this last week, stopped me on the front lawn, stopped me on my dog walk, talked to me at work. I'm really actually impressed with how much the community is paying attention to what's going on in Chambers. Anyways, so I do thank them for all the feedback, and I'm going to leave it at that, but I won't be supporting this motion for those reasons. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Bell.
Yes, through the chair. I also have seen that there are a number of Airbnbs that are available right now. And there still is a type 1 and 2 Airbnbs, rentals available. And what we're talking about here is type 3. We're talking about no host short-term rentals. And I have to say, as a council member, being my first year, this has been one of the most difficult decisions that I've ever had to make for 2 reasons. Number one, I really support tourism. I'm still not convinced that this is the reason that tourism is down. I haven't seen enough data to support that. I think we need to see that over time. But it has been the stories of the emotion of people that have lived in these areas where the short-term rentals, no host are. And their lives have been living hell. And yes, we want to do everything we can to bring out bylaw officers and so on. But there's only so many bylaw officers and so many people that we have to send out. Geographically, we're spread out, as you all know. So those stories broke my heart. And these were people that live here. They dreaded every weekend. They dreaded the summers because their life was completely destroyed, quite frankly, because their home was no longer home. So that really impacted me too in terms of my decision. I live in an area where I have also experienced that, and it is no fun. So I am not going to support this. I'm hopeful for that reason and also for the reason of what the province is doing right now. I will say there's 5 places in the area that I live have gone from short-term rentals to long-term rentals. So I have talked to those people. It has provided them with a place that they have not been able to find a place. And each one of them are so grateful to have a place where they can call home now. The other reason is certainly provincially, we have enough on our plates right now. We're trying to find, you know what's happening in the community in terms of unhoused and so on. Doesn't mean that this does not matter. It matters a lot. Every part of what we represent in this community matters to us. We have tough decisions to make right now. So I am not going to support this. I think over time, we're going to continue to keep an eye on this and see. We're going to continue to get data. We'll have more data, hopefully, through the province because they'll have hopefully some systems that they can support us with. But until I see more of this, I'm not supporting this.
Thank you, Councillor Inkster.
Yeah, I guess I'll contribute to this discussion. I did, though, according to process, thought that this was just a notice of motion for this item to come on the next council meeting. So I didn't think there would be much discussion on the notice to have it on the next council meeting. And so if I'm unclear about that, please correct me. But because everyone has spoken, going forward, thinking that it will come in the next couple of weeks, what I will be paying attention to is whether this is ultra vires, i.e. outside our powers to go against provincial rules. And if some members of our community think that we should be doing that, there's a number of other rules maybe we should go against, like seat belts, texting on our automobile. How far do we want to go with ignoring laws that were brought down by the province? The other questions I would ask, though, is if we want to look at numbers, maybe council could look at BC Ferries numbers. And if we find through that system, and we can easily find those numbers that it's gone up, and I've heard that the numbers have gone up, what are those numbers? Because if they're not specific to the STR, if it's a tourism argument being made, yet the numbers are rising here, then maybe there's a strong economic development argument being made that our economy is improving because the numbers are increasing to the Sunshine Coast. I've also heard from a number of people or not heard from a number of people that have looked for housing and have found housing over the last number of years. And once again, it's a decision. It's a tough decision for us to make because this council feels very strongly for those that are unhoused. And it's not an enjoyable debate to have with those that are arguing that they would never rent out their places that are STRs to renters because of the difficulty they've had with renters, or they've heard anecdotally from others as renters in the past. Council does not enjoy those debates because we just want to find housing for our community. That's what we want to find. We're supportive of any kind of law or any kind of movement that provides housing for our community that needs housing. It's not an economic argument for them. It's a place for them to live warm and dry and be members of our working community. Once again, we just want to find housing for our community. It's not a debatable option. So I look forward to the discussion in a couple of weeks, and maybe we'll touch on these points again, including up-to-date visitor numbers. Thank you.
Thank you. I think sorry, yes, Mr. Hall.
Sorry, just to clarify, because it's been raised a couple times that, like right now, the province did change the regulations. So where we previously allowed type 1, 2, and 3 SDRs, type 3 SDRs are no longer allowed because we had to eliminate that as a permitted use because the province did not allow it. So, between the business license bylaw and the zoning bylaw, we can't consider a business license for a type 3 right now or at any point until the province decides to change the rules again. So in that sense, a type 3 SDR is no longer an option until the province changes the legislation again.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Shepherd?
Yeah, so just to follow up on that point, we'd be going to the province to lobby to somehow opt out, and, but we, even if in the event that they said, sure, go ahead, we wouldn't be able to issue a license for a type 3. So it's so confusing legally that it's just not impractical. And
Okay. Okay, well, I can read a room. So I will just end, I guess, part of this comes from one personal experience, 2 young couples, between them 3 kids, came for the 2 and 3 years ago. Stayed in a house and they had visions of moving here. Eventually, when the kids were a little older and they could work remotely and so on. They haven't come back for 2 years. And they've started looking to go somewhere else to live on a permanent basis. So there are consequences to these sort of actions. As far as the provincial government, I have a different view. I think that we should be in front of them with everything. This doesn't have to be adversarial, but to explain perhaps what is unique about Sechelt and why that we should be treated differently is something that I think is fundamental to what we do as municipal elected officials. Having said that, as I say, I can read the room, so I will suggest, unless there's anything else, that we let this matter go. I won't look for a mover and a seconder even, because clear that won't happen. Okay, any other comments? We'll move on. Council, that means we go to page 34. Oops. All right. So. And okay, can we, council will move on then to item 6.1. And we have Mr. Nyhus with us, I'm sure. Was you not plugged in?
Thank you, Your Worship, and I apologize to council for the incredible volume of reading you've had to do. As stated in the request for decision, there are a lot of amendments for bylaws that are proposed. The progenitor of this spate of amendments was a review of the municipal ticket information bylaw that was badly out of date and badly out of sync. What was required. Staff took the opportunity to go over the fines in the bylaw notice and enforcement implementation bylaw as it was referenced in the amendments to the other bylaws. Part of that was to enhance the enforcement process when it came to fine amounts in the bylaw that were too low to be considered an effective deterrent, and how it offered early and late payment amounts that were difficult for the recipients and staff to manage. In the proposed amendments, the early and late payment amounts have been removed, and as have compliance agreements where they don't make sense. I can answer any questions you may have.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, council, I think we do need discussion about this. Any matters of substance? I guess I would ask as a general question, you're proposing increases in the fees, the fines, whatever. What's the benchmark, or like why these particular numbers?
putting it more in sync with other jurisdictions and coming up with an amount that we could say was a real deterrent. For example, construction without a permit in the building bylaw was $100, and if you paid it within 2 weeks, it became 50.
Mhm.
Now, that looks more like the cost of doing business to me before you obtain a permit rather than a real deterrent. And so that has subsequently been raised to 400, which is probably a better deterrent.
With no discount?
No early payment option. Even looking at our neighbors, the SCRD does have, I'm sorry for the feedback.
That's because we moved the table forward, I just realized.
I'll lower my voice. Even looking at the SCRD, they still have the early and late payment amounts in their Ben's bylaw, but it's only a $10 differential,
Yeah.
$10 less for early, $10 more for late. And I think the real problem for us was managing the expectation of the recipients of fines that even though they were late, they still expected an opportunity to pay the early payment amount. And if they were late, they'd still wanted to pay the early payment amount. It was quite difficult, in particular for the front counter staff to
Right.
manage these inquiries, requests, and expectations.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Other questions, Counselor Toth?
Thank you. I guess looking at the dollars assigned to some of these fines, of course, the bylaw department's first default action isn't to issue fines. Is my understanding, it's to get compliance voluntarily and to sort of work to a compromise or a solution. It's only when things are either egregious or extended that I think fines are really where staff have to go. So just confirmation of that would be great. Thank you.
You're absolutely right, Counselor. We seek compliance through voluntary measures always, and fines really are a last resort. Unfortunately, and I go back to the building bylaw, there are some frequent flyers that need a better deterrent. And I think part of it is word getting around, really, that it is a higher level of pain for contravening bylaws. But absolutely correct. Our first measure is voluntary compliance.
Great. Counselor McLaughlin.
Yes,
please.
thank you. Somebody asked me this, so I'm going to ask you, what happens if somebody who doesn't have an electric car decides it's great to park at the electric charging station? Is there, I mean, I guess it's usually a temporary thing, but you know, you might have some frequent flyers there too. I didn't see that in here. But maybe it is. It's just a lot of things.
Interesting.
It is actually in there, Counselor. It is contravention, it is parking contravention of a posted sign.
Don't do it again. Yeah, that's right. Okay, anything else? Counselor Shepherd,
I'll move the 10 recommendations on page 34.
seconded. Okay, any discussion, further discussion? All in favor? Carried. Now we go to work. Oops, where it go? Sorry, I jumped to the wrong page, actually. Thank you. All right, so this is bylaw number 491-05 before us for 3 readings, which if it suits folks, you can do a motion for all 3, Counselor Shepherd.
Yeah, I'll do a motion for adoption of bylaw 491-05, 2025 for 3 readings.
No. A motion to give 3 readings to bylaw number 491-05 on page 38. Thank you, and seconded, Counselor Toth. Yeah. Okay, any discussion? You're happy? Okay, all in favor? Carried. And we go to page 44. Got that right, Counselor Toff?
Thank you. I'm actually just reading off of the list that's on page 34 from the recommendations themselves because it's all in one spot. So I'm happy to move first, second, and third readings of bylaw notice enforcement implementation amendment bylaw number 515-15, 2025.
Thank you. A second. Do we care about typos? Mr. Nyhus, where did he go? Okay, at the bottom of page 44, obstruct and official. I hate being able to see that sort of thing. I think we can take that as a friendly correction. Yeah, very good. Okay, everybody clear what a compliance agreement is? Doesn't apply in this one, but okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried. And we go to page 70. And a motion, if it suits folks, for the building, to amend the building bylaw. And I'll speak at once. Counselor Toth.
I will move first, second, and third readings of building bylaw amendment number 409-13, 2025.
Thank you. Second. Thank you. Discussion. All in favor? Carried. And 72, page 72 being Porpoise Bay
I will-
Harbor.
Sure, I'll move bylaw number 494-03, 2025 for first, second, and third reading.
Thank you. Seconded, Counselor Inkster. All in favor? Opposed? Carried? Unanimous. Okay. And page 74. Somebody, don't make me beg.
Sure, I'll move that bylaw number 484-01, 2025 for three readings.
Second. Thank you. All in favor? Carried. 76, page 76. 440, yes, Counselor Todd.
Thank you. I'm just going to say something real quick first. I will actually read out the full title because not everybody has a printed agenda that they can follow along with. So if you're visually impaired or you're listening online, you know what we're actually talking about. So I'm going to move first, second, and third readings of the fireworks prohibition amendment bylaw 445-01, 2025.
Thank you. Second. Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried?
I'm going to do this one right. I'll make a motion to pass bylaw number 37-02, 2025, a bylaw to amend the District of Sechelt Mobile Home Park bylaw, number 37, 1989, for first, second, and third reading.
All in favor? Carried?
All move. Yes. First, second, and third movement, pesticide amendment bylaw number 44101, 2025.
Second? Okay. All in favor? Carried?
And I'll do sign bylaw first, second, and third. That are on our agenda 82, page 82. Bylaw amendment number 45604, 2025, first, second, and third reading.
I saw a second. All in favor? Carried? And on page 84, okay, second. Okay, all in favor? Carried. Okay. Phew. Then we go to item 6.2. Now, this is on page 86, and it's in regards to Derby Road, Granite Road, and the development on those properties. Mr. Hall, you're here. Anything to add to your fulsome report?
Sure, I'll just give a quick overview for council. It's probably been over a year since council considered these applications and this property. So in that time, the applicants have been hard at work. They've been doing a lot of the background work that has informed the land use plan that's attached to the report and forms the basis for the OCP amendment. So, you know, the additional environmental and archaeological, et cetera, work that was done to inform all of that. So what we have here is the OCP amendment with sort of the master land use plan that kind of really provides a more detailed and updated picture of land use and density on the property, dealing with both the residential changes and the some new neighborhood center proposed changes, plus kind of incorporation of new park areas and environmentally sensitive areas. So what we kind of have as part of the recommendations here is that the OCP amendment would get second reading. We'd refer it out again to a lot of agencies, community association, Shoshone Nation, provincial agencies, et cetera, for input onto the land use plan that we have now. The zoning bylaws would both get second reading, but we would just move the OCP amendment forward. So once the referral process has been completed, kind of collect all the comments, deal with that, come back to council, and kind of move the OCP amendment forward as part of that process and really focus on getting the OCP amendment adopted. That will then allow us to return to the zoning amendments and move them forward. And with the OCP amendment adopted, these zoning amendments would become consistent with the OCP. Therefore, no public hearing would be required for those individual zoning amendments. We would have had the public hearing for the OCP amendment bylaw. So it's a way of putting into practice the provincial changes around OCP compliance and public hearings. And then there's obviously a number of rezoning conditions proposed as well as we grapple with some of the standard things council has considered in the past, as well as further development issues for this site overall. But otherwise, if there's any questions on what's proposed, let me know.
Great. Thank you. Council, I think, yeah, let's see if there's some preliminary questions or. Okay, well, if I don't see any initially, Councillor McLaughlin, please.
Yes, thank you, through the chair. I'm just wondering, you mentioned wildlife corridors. I don't know, have those been mapped by anybody? It'd be nice to know where they are, because I don't really see too much reference in this respecting ecosystems and greenways and things like that, because to do conservation design, I would have expected like at least 30% of the land to be somehow kept in more natural state. That's not really implied here. And I'm also wondering the number of housing units that we could
Can we
expect
just
from
get
this.
an answer to that question
Yep.
first? Yeah.
Sure.
Councillor, Mr. Hall.
Sure, I mean, that's definitely one of the things that, if you look at the land use plan itself, I guess there's sort of there's the green arrows and there's some of the green shaded areas, and there's a green kind of hatched area that kind of overlaps. So the green arrows are kind of where they've, through their environmental assessment, shown wildlife corridor areas. So that's kind of why we wanted those displayed here. They are showing some park areas there. Whether or not it becomes a functional park space or just environmental area is still to be worked on. The green hatched areas kind of highlights a big chunk of environmentally sensitive area. There's sort of wetlands in there that we've asked them to protect, that we have a lot of OCP policies around that. So that's where this future residential land use designation that we've created kind of also sits underneath that. So this idea that part of their early proposals, the applicants wanted to see that entire area as residential, given the environmentally sensitive areas that we identified through their assessments. Staff are of the view that this, for the most part, shouldn't be developed, and the policies would kind of support that. So that's why we created this future residential land use designation where this particular area wouldn't be, developed anytime soon. So there's an opportunity to do more investigation, come up with, if there is to be development here, more time to determine what that looks like, cluster it more appropriately. But the idea is that area is primarily one of the main, sort of limited or no development areas that we would look at kind of shifting the density to other areas of the site. And that's part of the change with, if you look at the OCP now, a lot of the two properties is just residential, whereas this would add more of the multifamily mixed residential designation in place of that. So they are, as part of that change, proposing to increase the density. And then just to jump ahead to the units question, with the OCP amendment that we adopted a little while ago, the units per hectare was removed. So we're really thinking about this in terms of floor area ratio within each of these designations. So in terms of the numbers of units, we're not really getting into that piece anymore.
Okay, so that was on wildlife corridor, and essentially we'll see where the wildlife goes in the coming years.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is to highlight, like, we are showing those areas on the plan and kind of saying that they're not the highest priority area for development. Obviously, even the applicants, their initial phases or their next phases are really the Derby and Granite development sites. Likely then south of Derby would be the next section after that.
Okay,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, Councilor
Um,
McLaughlin.
I also looked on the SCRD mapping in terms of steep slopes. So just knowing the area, anybody there, you're looking up some pretty steep slopes with a lot of trees on them. So I'm just wondering how the, over 30% really aren't supposed to be developed according to our OCP. And how those are taken into account. And then even the ones that are slightly less, how is that being taken into account? Because this is kind of, like you say, going to be inserted into the OCP. Thank you.
So, okay, so you're saying that for the two, the Granite and the Derby projects, they're on steep slopes?
Well, this whole plan goes, as part of what's allowing those projects. So if this is what we have to approve to get those two projects, then it really means we have to discuss this whole area.
Okay.
In terms of steep slopes, yeah, but they tend to be further down south towards the, I think a lot of the steep slopes towards the highway.
Yes, yeah. Okay, thank you. I was picturing it that those two properties are not steep, the Granite, the Derby. So that's why I was questioning that. So do you want to comment on the steep slopes for the overall project?
Yeah, I mean, I guess certainly the area between the highway and Derby is probably contains most of the steep sections of the property. There are other steep sections as well, but I guess there's one aspect of, once you get down to the, a development permit level, that would still apply, but certainly that would be part of the review moving forward, even as if council gives it second reading, to factor in, the proposed land uses and densities and how that can be accommodated in those areas where it is steeper slopes. It's not an ultimate prohibition against development when it's 30% or more, but it obviously has implications for the change where previously there was contemplating, a lower density residential, and now it's being proposed as a higher density residential.
Right. Okay, thanks. I think that's answers the question that for this part of I hear you, Councilor McLaughlin, we need to be aware of that, but I think the staff have answered that. Just before I come back to you, any other questions, folks? Okay.
Yeah, just thinking through this too. I'm wondering, is the idea of the highway corridor not going by the BC Hydro right of way, is that a given? Because this seems to be implying that that is a given.
Sorry, can you try that again?
The
The BC
highway-
Hydro right away?
Right, that's where
Yeah.
one of the routes that was going to be
For-
for the highway.
Yes,
So, this doesn't
So-
seem to indicate that the highway would be going through here.
right.
I think we'd have to have more land set aside for highway.
Okay, but
so-
again, we're here mostly talking about Granite and Derby.
Well, this
Right.
is the precursor to let that go ahead, so this is why I'm bringing these things up. I would prefer that we didn't have to do
Yeah.
this right now, but since it's here, we
Oh,
have
yeah,
to address
well,
this, yeah.
Okay, Mr. Hall?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly the, I guess, the current, now old transportation master plan still kind of contemplated back in 2009 that there would be an alternate highway route. With a new transportation master plan underway, and with engagement that we've done with the Ministry of Transportation over the last number of years, um, uh, I would say from the staff perspective, we have the sense that an alternate route for the highway is off the table. So the new transportation master plan draft doesn't consider that at all. So that's why, we're not considering it as part of this land use plan. We've had no kind of indication from the provincial ministry that that's a thing for us to even consider at the moment. So it's not something that's factored into the TMP and not something that we need to be concerned about in the OCP for this location.
Thank you. Won't go down that rabbit hole at the moment, but, okay. I had a question about, we're talking about transit. So what is the overall plan? Because we certainly get concerns and comments from neighbors on Cowrie and elsewhere about the volume of traffic. How is this going to be addressed in the near term and the long term?
That's a good question. I mean, certainly the additional east-west connections from West Seashell back to town are a big topic of the transportation master plan in terms of high-level connections. There is, I guess, from the work that's been done over the last number of years, we can kind of figure out that there's really no one single connection that's going to be a magical arterial connection that's going to solve all these issues. It's more about having more local roads to disperse the traffic and give more routes east-west. So, there'd still be an intent for Derby and Tyler to link up and to have some kind of connection from there, perhaps to Anchor, perhaps to other roads. But it would be more a question of multiple east-west connections rather than one single major connection.
Well, and that was my question, so right now, the possibility is Derby to Norwest down to the 101. The
Yeah, I
longer
mean,
term,
in
it's
terms
from
of-
Derby up to, I thought I saw a map which actually had it connecting to Trail up off the end of Reeves onto Trail, which I have to believe is not anytime soon.
Potentially not. I mean, that's something for
Page 94.
the district to think about. I don't know if Director of Engineering wants to weigh in on that.
Yes, I can comment a little bit on that, but more to what Ian had said, we're looking at perforating these neighborhoods with more connections as opposed to creating one arterial road in the particular location that's not particularly constructible. Many of these road connections are dependent on development and will occur at the time of development. So when we're talking about connecting up to Reef Road, for example, that would be dependent on that parcel developing to make those connections or further to the east from the parcel in question. So a lot of that is development dependent, and in the interim would have to utilize the connections that are actually there. But with a lot of the study that we've done and the capacity analysis of the roads that we have through the transportation master plan indicate, other than some minor intersection improvements, for the most part, capacity is sufficient for the amount of development that we're contemplating. So the minor improvements would occur at a time of development.
Okay, thank you. So essentially, this doesn't contemplate any improvement in our transit. We're using the existing roads for these two properties.
It's not contemplating any road construction outside of its borders.
Right, thank you.
Correct.
Okay, thanks. Other things, folks? One of our biggest weaknesses these days is we've approved a lot as council, but we're not getting things built. It's not our job to build them, but is there any sense of how fast this process will work, and, this is of course a well-known owner and builder and so on, but what is reasonable for a time frame? We do the OCP amendment, are we talking a couple of years before they have shovels in the ground? And the second part, what can we do to incentivize them to actually get building?
I mean, I think the biggest piece here has been the OCP amendment and the master land use plan. I mean, this, going back to the first phase and, the sort of the existing development covenant on title, the idea has been always that there should be a master plan for these two properties. And a few phases have been approved and the master plan was never done. So we've kind of reached this point where it's like, okay, we need to get this piece done before we can move any of these individual pieces further forward. So I think the applicant has done a lot of work to get to this point. And I would say we have the sense that once the OCP amendment is adopted and we're moving these two rezonings forward, they're certainly keen to move forward. So with the OCP amendment adopted, that kind of paves the way for the rezonings to be adopted as compliant with the OCP, not needing a public hearing. And then, it's subsequent to that would be subdivision and development permit applications. And those could proceed whether or not they're looking at doing both the Derby and Granite at the same time, or it may be Derby first and then the Granite application. That's on them to decide, but certainly they're keen to focus on these two as their next two projects, because basically the existing previous approvals they've built out. So these are certainly their next priority.
Right, and I mean, we've heard that, and this is not directed at the owner or the builder, but, I guess I'm concerned we've had projects that have not moved ahead because of economics, because of costs, a whole bunch of things, and we keep approving, but what more can we do to get things built?
Yeah, I'm not sure if
Rhetorical
Yeah.
for now, Mr. Hall.
Yeah.
Councillor McLaughlin?
Oh,
second.
yes, thank you to the chair. Yeah, I'm concerned about that too, and I am concerned by putting this application forward that we're just allowing the whole energy of the development community to dissipate towards the easiest things to do, which are these new subdivisions, rather than some of the tricky projects that we've already approved, maybe 1,000 units in total. Angela told us that last time I was here. So we have approved a lot. So I think this is almost counterproductive, because the more we approve, the less likely it is that any one project will be done. That's the way it seems to me. And also, in terms of water, I think a lot of us said we wouldn't support large new developments without water. Now, we have the possibility of water, but I would rather see us have a reservoir built with water before we go ahead with this. Because I don't know how many people this represents, but if you meet the school board, they're going to want to know, because they're going to say, maybe we need a school site, and what do we do then? What would happen if we did need a school site? So these are big questions that should be planned in advance, but I see this is just happening
Okay,
here.
can I then,
Thank you.
has there been a water demand or water supply part to this yet? Is it?
There has been previous referrals to the SCRD, but it certainly, the idea here is now that we have the refined OCP amendment, that it would be referred out again. So SCRD would be on the list. Chishal, provincial, like everyone would get this again, focus on commenting on the proposed OCP amendment. And then if there's refinements that need to happen, we bring those comments back to council. And that's ultimately the focus is really like get the OCP amendment and the master land use plan done first. And however long that takes, and then that paves the way for the zoning amendments in future to come, whether it's
No,
these
I-
two.
Right, so, but the question, so the water, we'd be going back to the SCRD for these two properties?
And the land use plan itself.
Yeah. Okay, I'll go to Councillor Shepherd. And then Councillor
Just to follow up on Councillor McLaughlin's point, in previous projects, Councillor McLaughlin's argued that the project shouldn't be approved because there should be a master plan. And it just seems to me with what we're seeing now is master planning for an area, and that it's actually still possible for council, if all of council felt, look, there's 1,000 units approved, nothing's getting built, it's still possible to stop this by not approving future more further rezoning of the project. But it should be something good that we have a master plan for the area.
Yes,
Okay.
if I could comment on that. It's a
sorry,
part of
no,
a master plan.
Sorry, no.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Counselor
See.
Toth.
It's okay. Thank you. I appreciate seeing, a grander picture. And I think when we talk about a master plan or neighborhood plans, there's probably 7 of us at this table. There's probably 9 different ideas on what that actually looks like. I appreciate that this is sort of the next step in the process for this area. It's between a, relatively developed downtown, we're working on density downtown, and a fairly well-developed West Sechelt. So I think, it's infill in a way, and it's not to say that we shouldn't still have green space and consideration for the school board and things like that, but that's part of sending the referrals out. I actually spoke with the school board chair just a couple days ago, and they know what they need and where they need it. And so when we send out referrals, they will let us know if they need land as part of a development. The fact of the matter is, Sechelt Elementary is right there, has tons of capacity. The school's almost completely unused. Kinnickinnick Elementary, tons of capacity. The school's only about 60% of capacity right now. West Sechelt is over capacity, at capacity. But boundaries can be moved, kids can be moved. And so I think, if we don't send the referrals, we'll never hear back what the other people need. And so I'm supportive of this moving forward at this time. There will be development permits that council needs to approve. There will be zonings that council needs to approve. There's going to be a ton of stuff that council needs to approve on this project over the next 5-10 years. And it's gonna, we're not the only ones that are gonna have eyes on this project in the future. Thanks.
Okay, we'll go to Counselor McLaughlin and then Counselor Inkster.
Thank you, through the chair. I was just going to say, like, this is sort of part of a neighborhood plan. It's too small of an area to be a total neighborhood, but there are large lots around it, which it would have been nice to have that sort of drafted out too, so that we get a more of a fulsome plan and can actually have the opportunity to produce something that's more thoroughly thought out and integrated and has more conservation design. Because if we just do slivers at a time, we just deal with that sliver and we don't end up with, I think, the potential better developments that we could have and the synergies that can have. But I realize it's a smaller municipality and that's just kind of how it goes. But I do not want this to be a missed opportunity either, because it is one of our last major areas of undeveloped land. So that's my intention there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Inkster?
Thanks. This particular development here and the proposal that will come around it is sort of the sensible build out of the infill that fills in West Sechelt to downtown Sechelt, has been planned for a number of years. My only concern going forward is roads and trail networks, as has been mentioned before. So accessibility via alternative road networks and/or trail networks to get people off the main road, which may be a little thin, that goes by the high school, as many council members may have noticed. So we may have to look at alternative routes. As well, though, I mean, in a larger planning perspective, there are a number of pieces of land within the district of Sechelt, in West Sechelt, around Wakefield, that will be developed, that are part of the next larger development, and we may make decisions over density in that area as well. It seems like the next steps in the development of West Sechelt that has been envisioned since the 1990s. Thanks.
Okay. Something tweaked for me. This plan on page 94, does this represent the build out of the complete Swaney lands? Like the piece between Tyler and Oracle to the west. Is that a separate owner and how is it zoned?
Yeah, so the OCP amendment only covers the two Sawarni properties. So I guess to the east, you have the land still owned by the Clayton family
Hmm.
in between this property and the
Yep.
downtown village area. To the west, I guess, yeah, between Oracle and Tyler is a single landowner, who, I don't think has been much interested in any development, but that
Right.
certainly is a significant chunk there.
But it's a
The-
separate owner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely separate
Right.
owner, yeah.
And how's it zoned? Do you know?
It's probably all zoned the same. I think it will all have the
Yeah.
background RU1 zone.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So my point there is you can't impose our will on that property owner if he or she doesn't want to change it. Right now, we only can deal with the proposals that are before us. All right, well, thank you, Councillor Shepherd.
I'll move recommendations 1 to 6 on page 86.
And second, Councillor Rowe seconds. Okay. Everybody happy? Got your questions answered? All in favor? Sorry, I didn't, yeah, thank you. No, I didn't see Councillor Rowe. Okay, the motion carries. Great, thank you. Council, we then go to the minutes of our, oh, goody. Goody. All right, who would like to give second reading, what am I saying? Second reading to 492-32. Thank you, Councillor Bell. Second, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. And then we go to page 98. And same question, second reading for zoning bylaw number 580, 2022.
So moved.
Thank you. Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. And page 100. This is. Am I missing something? Go ahead. Somebody help me here.
Thank you. I think it's because it's two different parcels, so it's two different zoning bylaws.
Thank
I'll move, we give second reading to bylaw number 580-12, 2023, being a bylaw to amend District of Sechelt zoning bylaw 580, 2022.
It's on page 100.
Yep.
Okay, second. And third, okay, all in favor? Carried. Okay, now if I may, we'll go to item 7.1, page 103. Any concerns or comments on our minutes of March 5th? Not a motion to adopt. Thank you, Councillor Bell, second, Councillor Shepherd, all in favor? Carried. Then we go to item 7.2, and I would like to suggest that we adopt the minutes because as far as the recommendations, I think there's some differences on the various items. So specifically, I will be not supporting the endorsement of the 5.62% property tax increase. So I'm not comfortable receiving and endorsing the whole package. So to that end, I would prefer to receive the minutes of the committee of the whole of February 26th, and then proceed to endorse, should we so wish, the recommendations for 5 and 6. So what was that for? To adopt, to receive the minutes of the committee of the whole.
Well, my suggestion, because it's one specific item that you've got an issue with in the recommendations, so my suggestion was going to be to move receipt of the minutes and adoption of the remaining recommendations, and then we can discuss that one on its own.
Okay, that's your motion?
Yep.
Seconder? Okay. All in favor? Carried? Okay, and then, motion, should you wish to endorse recommendation 5? Counselor Toth, second. People follow me? I don't want to jump ahead, so item 5 is the recommendation from committee of the whole to approve a property tax increase 5.6. That's a second. Thank you. Okay. Any discussion? I suppose I need to speak to it, that I'm still of the view that we need to sharpen our pencils, and I'm aware of the time frames that are on us, but would encourage council to continue to find, or for us to find ways to bring that number down. It is the second highest over the last number of years, and I continue to believe that we need to increase our infrastructure, 3% infrastructure. So I'd rather see more of our tax dollars going to infrastructure and somehow finding ways to reduce the tax increase for our operating fund. So that's why I will be voting in opposition to this. Okay, I'll call a question. All in favor? Opposed? I'm opposed. Councillor Bell, I didn't see your vote. You're in favor? Thank you. Okay, the motion carries. Then we go to item 7.3, which is the minutes of the February 24 Sunshine Coast Regional Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting, and I think the typo that the first line says the committee of the whole, but we'll be looking to we're just receiving these minutes.
The committee actually made a recommendation that they're hoping will be endorsed by
Right.
this council, the Regional District Board, and the Town of Gibson's council as well.
Mhm. Okay, so, yeah, so the committee of the whole meeting reference is not correct, but that doesn't matter for this motion. Okay. Please?
Thank you. I have a question for our rep to this committee, Councillor Inkster. Recommendation 2, which I believe is the one that they're looking to have us endorse, talks about Gibson's, SCRD, and Seashell advocating to BC Transit to support coordinating handy dart drop-off and pickup times with the BC ferry schedule. I'm just looking for a little context in how that conversation went, because my understanding at the regional district is that the regional district more or less runs the handy dart scheduling. So not to throw the SCRD under the proverbial bus here, but yeah, I'm just wondering how that conversation went.
You mean how the conversation went with the people with accessibility challenges that would like better service? Is that what you're saying?
Well, the recommendation here
Yeah.
is for the governments to advocate to BC Transit to do a thing that I believe the SCRD is actually responsible for. So I'm just wondering if how comprehensive that discussion was, because if it's BC Transit, we're lobbying, that's great. I just don't want to go to them. If it's not them, we should be going
Yeah,
to.
I think there's not clarity with the committee members as to who provides the service, right? That's simply what can happen. A number of the committee members, one of the things that can happen with committee members on those committees is those that have lived elsewhere or traveled elsewhere see a different service being provided by BC Transit in those communities, which could mean more and better handy dart services that they'd like to see on the Sunshine Coast. That's why there tends to be that confusion.
Don't get me wrong, still supportive of lobbying BC Transit for anything and everything we can. just wanted to make sure that the conversation,
Well,
you know,
well, of
was
course.
comprehensive.
Yeah, I mean, just a clarity of roles, but I mean, we have to understand that BC Transit may be supportive of that, but there's local taxpayer contribution as well for better services.
Okay, so I need a motion, please, to receive the minutes of the Accessibility Advisory Committee, and if you wish to endorse the recommendation on page 3 of our agenda, first and second. Further discussion? In favor? Carried. All right, what everybody's waited for is the report from the Sunshine Coast Regional District representatives, which I understand will be tag team of Councillor Inkster and Councillor Shepherd, perhaps.
Yeah, I know that a couple of us that are LGLA, and I know that Councillor Shepherd made it to the regional district meetings, which he was looking forward to and happily looking forward to taking part in. So maybe they made a number of changes to our roles and responsibilities, including stipends. I don't know, but Councillor Shepherd, speak to it, and then I'll speak to what's happening tomorrow. Thanks.
Yeah, happy to fulfill my role as alternate at the SCRD. Very short agenda. First motion on, you know, additional monies to study the landfill fencing of the landfill, and extra monies required to include the Sechelt Nation in technical studies. That was the most important issue on the agenda. Short. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Councillor Inkster, tomorrow?
Thank you. Tomorrow, we will have a hospital meeting, and we will be talking about capital of the hospital as we normally do. If there's any additional capital requirements and where that will be funded from, whether it's local taxpayer and or provincial government. And that'll be followed by a meeting, COW of post-budget discussions, how the budget went going forward, how we'd like to see the budget be presented, and anything that may be on the horizon pre-budget for next year. And I think that's it. And I don't know if the chair wanted to speak to any of that. I mean, hopefully I touched it all.
Okay.
Thank you. I don't really have anything I wanted to touch on from the agenda, which is why I asked those two to deal with it. I think the one thing that's important to comment on that I'm surprised Councillor Shepherd didn't mention was the motion to come together as a multi-jurisdictional roundtable around tariffs, and to have that conversation with the Chamber and the Downtown Business Association and the MLA and the MP. Of course, whether or not we can actually pull that meeting together before we go into federal election mode and we don't have an MP anymore, remains to be seen. But yeah, and I think going forward, one of the changes we've made was we've gotten rid of the finance committee, and so a lot of the things are going to committee of the whole, except relating to budget, utility rates, that sort of thing. There will still be a budget committee that meets a few times a year in the fall and the winter. I think I'll leave it there for now. Thanks.
Very good. Thank you. All right, who's ready to speak of your council reports? Looks like Councillor Bell's got lots of notes. Okay.
Did attend, a few of us attended our local government leadership academy conference, and this year the theme was effective engagement for inclusive and transparent governance. So that is seems to be a theme in many of the conferences these days. And also just there were some good speakers there. One in particular that I highlight is a CEO from the Castlegar Y, and did a really good, interesting model around infrastructure. And I think it would be certainly a great one for us to have a look at. So, but that's it for now. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. We'll do a different, Councillor Rowe.
Doing? Yes, I was with Councillor Bell doing all the learnings at LGLA. It was a good conference this year. And there was a session called From the Balcony around how to best use your time in those advocacy moments with MLAs that I thought was really interesting and something that kind of hasn't been presented before. So that was good. I finally had one of my fundraisers for the Building Together project for community services. The 50 Women campaign is over, but you know, I'll just keep going because I didn't get going early enough. So we had a ladies' clothing sale on Saturday. It was very well attended and we made almost $1,200 on used clothing. So that was very good. To put with the hockey, next up is Family Feud, so watch for that. And then I just wanted to talk about our little junior hockey team because, to make a long story short, BC Hockey has restructured junior hockey and they've separated it out into Tier 1 and Tier 2. And this coastal tsunami made Tier 1. Now that we had a 500-ish season, which isn't bad for a first team, but that's not what they look at. So everyone received a audit. So there were people that came to one of our weekends in January, I think I was, in disguise, right, just as visitors. And they came to a game, saw this level of support, saw how we ran things. And then they sort of announced who they were. And then, although I think the people in charge knew who they were. And they really had a good look at the program that the team runs. And that's what made us a level 1 team or a Tier 1 team, which is really great because as sort of from a grassroots level, that's kind of what we were hoping for as hockey parents 8 years ago when we started working on this. And so it's very gratifying to see that recognized. And the idea with a Tier 1 team, you're going to attract better players because of the program. There's going to be a better chance that those players go on to college or higher levels of hockey. So that was great news. It's going to be very competitive. So the level 1 and level 2 teams don't face each other during the season. So it's going to be super competitive next season, but it's a big coup for us, especially in the year 1. And I really give credit to the GM and the coaching staff of the team. So yay, Sunshine Coast.
Great, thank you. Yes. Counselor Shepherd.
Yeah, other than the SARD, I did attend the Master Transportation Plan open house. I thought it was really well presented. Fantastic vision for a plan of routes to connect neighborhoods in Sechelt. So I thought it was really well organized and planning seemed to be very happy with the attendance. So it was a good exercise. I think they got a lot of comments back. Today was the community safety meeting that Councillor Bell runs. And we're on our way, I think, to developing a community safety plan for Sechelt. I know that we all want to see that put into place because we've only got about 1.5 years left within this term. So we've got great input from different parts of the community on that. So certainly making some progress. Last week was the airport development meeting, the airport development committee. Last night, yeah, it's all merging. Again, the master plan is really, except for some sort of typesetting and small detail, it is virtually ready. So the committee have been urging the committee to try and present the results to council, to be very frank with what problems they have and what their vision is for the next 20 years. I think there's a lot of opportunity for Sechelt there. So I'm looking forward to that. And I think that's it. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, through the chair. Went to a downtown community association meeting. It was very well, we had a bit of an overview of the official community plan process. It was nice, but we need more members. We are starving for members. I don't know, what it is, but anyway, anybody who wants to be a member that lives in the area, please come.
Of the Sea Shelton Village Community
Yeah,
Association, yes,
Yeah, sorry, well,
Yeah.
downtown.
not to be confused with the downtown businesses. that's all.
No.
Yeah.
Well, it is confusing, and also I was at Brenda's clothing sale with my friend who bought quite a few things, which was a nice surprise. We didn't have any idea that that was going on. And I was also at the Transportation Master Plan meeting. I was in the day early, so maybe more came later. There weren't too many when I was there, but it's good to see that going on. It was basically several plans where you could add your comments and stickies and ask questions and stuff like that. So that's about it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Inkster?
Thanks. Just a little bit of advice to Councillor McLaughlin, Downtown Village Association cookies. Bring cookies. They work on me. Yeah, I'll be there. The last week transformation plan meeting at the Seaside Center, as has been mentioned, there wasn't a lot of people there when I was there. I missed post council members, but good graphics and very helpful staff who were there to answer questions and obviously to solicit information from the public on our transportation plan throughout the district. So it's good to see that presentation. Glad we'll keep doing those with what council or community envisions as our future. The LGLA conference that was mentioned, just a couple of things that were good on Thursday. Building trust around the table. That was one of the subject areas. Empowering your CAO, effective community engagement of First Nations, community engagement, revising your OCP. And the one that was mentioned, one that was interesting was beyond the term, how local leaders reflect on their time in office. So there was, as mentioned, there's 5 of us there. We took some notes. I sent some information back to Councillor Shepherd that I saw when we were talking about the regional district that day. So some helpful pieces from the conference on leadership that we all should keep in mind as to how we model in front of our community. And also just wanted to mention that as council members, we've had we've been quite busy discussing budgets lately, increases and decreases, so within our budget. So council has bid into those issues that are known to the public, has had extensive discussions on them as to where we could go up or down and whether that was feasible and workable under the budget timelines presented to us. I just also wanted to, as my last note, just a recognition of International Women's Day, which fell on a Saturday, which is a little sad because it doesn't allow us at the municipality and/or I'm sure the managers to, and maybe they did. It's hard to do ahead of time though or after. Recognize all the hardworking, thoughtful women in our staff, and of course the women in our community. And it's just a shout out to all of them. And I think I found a small gift for a few of the women in our staff when I was away. So just a token and to recognize them on Women's Day. Thank you.
Okay,
Don't worry,
Counselor
there's no
Toth.
diamonds.
Thank you, Councillor Inkster. Smart Man recognizes International Women's Day every day. I think the only, others have spoken about the stuff that we've been attending. I really wanted to talk about LGLA, but I left my notes on the table at home, so I'm going to circulate something in writing in time for next council meeting. And beyond that, I don't really have anything to report. So thank you.
Okay, thanks. I'll add to Councillor McLaughlin, the Sea Shelton Village Community Association. Thanks to Bob Mitcher, Angela Letman, Dale Golby, and Gary Trinder for stepping up. And a big thanks to Jill Hemmings and Pat Dalgleish, who've stepped aside after, I think it's 3 years of steady, really getting things rolling. Reference have been made to tariffs. There was a provincial webinar with some ministers, and even the Premier came on briefly to talk about the importance of tariffs. I hope that we all have the energy, the dedication to to actually address what is some pretty daunting stuff coming, I fear. Real treat to go to the City of Vancouver Council meeting in last week in support of the Green Line ferries and support Callum Campbell in his efforts to get us another option for passenger-only ferries to right downtown into Cole Harbour. And it's interesting, council was unanimously in support and also asked to push to get it back, to try to get back to where the C bus comes in. I gather there's some real interjurisdictional issues, but anyways, it's a fascinating project and you're going to hear a lot more about the innovation that Green Line is proposing. I won't say much about LGLA other than a number of mayors and others were talking. We met with several mayors and lots of councillors. I connected with some new and old timers, and I'm struck by how similar a lot of the issues are that we're all addressing. And heads up to those in the gallery and watching, some are already starting, of the people I met at LGLA, are already starting to recruit or encourage people to run in the next election. So we're never too soon to volunteer. It's to all of you. Fun time on Sunday night, the Sunshine Coast EV Association. We had our second annual drive-in movie, and we had about 50 cars and 125 people. Some even brought their smelly old gas cars, but we parked them at the back because, you know, because they do smell when they turn their motors on. But a great evening at Blue Ocean Golf, great fun movies, some great snacks, and like I say, fun. Other than that, the community forest continues. I think Councillor Toth, you and I made it to a board meeting, airport, and community safety. Other than that, not much. All right, anything else? Have I missed anything? No? Okay, then motion to adjourn. Second, all in favor? We are adjourned, and now it's time for questions.